All right, welcome back, everyone. We're ready for another deep dive today, huh?
Definitely.
And today we're going depth on human-robot teams. You know, HRTs, those are getting pretty common, right?
Yeah.
Especially in disaster response. And, I mean, we all remember, Hurricane Ian.
Yeah.
Just the chaos of that. And so we have a really fascinating research study that looks at, well, how fatigue impacts drone pilots.
Yeah.
In these kind of scenarios, simulated disaster scenarios.
Right.
So basically, what are the hidden vulnerabilities of these high-tech teams that we're using more and more?
Yeah, it's really critical work because, drones, I mean, they're becoming just so vital in disaster response. They survey damage, they can find survivors.
Oh, yeah, deliver aid,
Yeah, all that stuff.
all kinds of stuff.
But we kind of overlook the human element. The people who are actually operating these systems under extreme pressure.
Right, the human cost.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in this study, they really pushed these pilots.
It did.
They had 18 experienced drone pilots, and they put them through a 24-hour exercise.
Right.
That's a long time.
It is.
They simulated a real disaster, 9 missions, sleep deprivation. They did all kinds of fatigue assessments throughout.
Yeah.
So what did they learn? What did they find?
Instead of, fatigue just impacting everything equally, they actually found a pretty interesting pattern.
Really?
Yeah. They divided each of these missions into 3 phases.
Okay.
Initiation, execution, and then termination.
Okay. So the beginning, the middle, and the end.
And the kinds of errors the pilots were making, changed depending on what phase they were in.
Really?
Yeah.
So walk me through it. How did the fatigue manifest differently?
So in the initial phase, right, when they're starting things up,
Yeah.
the pilots actually became increasingly confused as fatigue set in.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because think about it, initiating a mission involves a lot of planning, you're setting things up, you're making these big decisions.
Yeah.
So you're already struggling to process information at that stage.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's going to have, this kind of ripple effect.
Yeah, like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
And the whole mission.
It's almost like trying to write an important email when you're exhausted.
Yeah.
What you want to say.
Right.
But you just, can't get the words out.
You can't put it together.
Yeah, you can't put it together. So what happens, so that's the initiation phase, and then what happens when they're actually flying?
So then, during execution, the pilots, they started using what they call compensatory strategies.
Compensatory strategies?
Yep.
What does that mean?
So, like narrowed focus.
Okay.
Kind of tunnel vision.
Gotcha.
They're hyper-focusing on one thing to make up for the fact that they're just generally fatigued.
But that makes them miss these other crucial details.
Oh, yeah.
In the environment.
Right.
And of course, that's, not ideal.
Not when you're navigating a disaster zone.
Especially not then.
Where things are changing so quickly.
Yeah, constantly.
Oh, man. And then the last phase.
So then during the termination phase.
Okay. Wrapping things up.
Yeah. They're landing.
Right.
They're processing the data.
Yeah.
These are tasks that require, a lot of precision and attention to detail. And fatigue really, messes with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's where they saw, the most increase in errors.
Really?
Yeah.
So even though they're, skilled pilots, they're making mistakes, just different kinds of mistakes depending on the phase.
Yeah. That's exactly what it showed. It's really fascinating because, it reminds us that fatigue doesn't just make us, sleepy.
Yeah.
It impacts, how we think.
Right.
In different ways.
Yeah.
Depending on, what we're doing.
Right.
Right.
So it really depends on the task at hand.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. But they also looked at the visual observers.
Oh, right.
The pilot's teammates who are, helping them monitor the drone and everything.
Right.
And they actually saw a totally different pattern there.
Really?
With the fatigue, yeah.
So the visual observers were affected differently.
Yeah.
How so?
So while the pilots, we said got more confused during the initiation, the visual observers, they became more distracted.
Okay.
So think about their role.
Yeah.
During that phase, they're not actively controlling the drone or anything.
Right.
They're just kind of watching.
It's more of a monitoring role.
Right.
And when you're fatigued, that can lead to, mind wandering. It's like trying to pay attention in a really boring meeting when you're tired.
Oh, I know that feeling. Right. Totally. Yeah.
So your mind just starts to drift.
Yeah, it goes other places. Right. And then as the mission moved into, the actual operation of the drone,
Right, the execution phase.
they displayed what the study called task disengagement.
Huh. Task disengagement. That doesn't sound good.
So they were, less actively involved,
Okay.
less communicative.
Right.
They just weren't as engaged with what was happening.
Oh, so that's a problem though, right? Because they're, supposed to be helping keep the mission safe.
Right. They play a really critical role.
Yeah. So we have these tired pilots making different kinds of errors
Yeah.
depending on the task, and then we have their teammates getting distracted
Yeah.
and not really engaged. So what does that mean for the team as a whole?
It really highlights, how fatigue, it doesn't just impact individuals.
Yeah.
It impacts the whole team.
The team dynamic.
Exactly. And remember, this was just a 24-hour exercise.
Right.
Real-world disaster response, can last for days.
Oh, yeah.
Even weeks.
Weeks.
Yeah. With
Yeah.
crews working around the clock.
Oh, wow. That's intense. So even though, no one, crashed a drone or anything,
Right.
no major safety incidents in the simulated environment.
Right.
They did find, clear signs that there could be.
Right. Like the distraction, the confusion.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big takeaway, I think, for anyone, really.
Yeah, it is.
Even if you're not, responding to disasters.
Right. It is. And what's really interesting, what really stood out to me was that the peak of the errors happened around 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So they think that's probably due to the combination of our, circadian rhythms.
Right.
And the fact that they'd been awake for so long.
Right. So it's not just how much sleep we get.
Exactly.
It's also when we get it.
Yeah, the timing is really important.
That's something I need to think about more.
Yeah, it's something to keep in mind if you're, working late or if you're in those high pressure situations.
Right. Right.
Right.
So this is basically saying it's not just about the technology, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we have this amazing technology,
Yeah.
but it still comes down to the humans.
Absolutely. Even with, the best tech, human limitations are still a factor.
Yeah.
And we need to plan for that.
Right. And train for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this study is really interesting. It's all about, these pilots' fatigue, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of our listeners are going to be thinking, well, that's really interesting, but I don't fly drones.
Right.
How does this apply to me?
Yeah, I think it shows us some really important things about, fatigue in general.
Okay.
And teamwork.
Yeah.
And how humans perform under pressure.
Right.
Think about, any time you've had to make a big decision when you're tired,
Oh, yeah.
at work, in your personal life,
Right.
or even just, driving home after a long day.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes when we're exhausted.
Right.
This just shows us how important it is to, really recognize that.
Yeah. So what practically can we do with this? Should we all be taking naps at 2:30 in the morning?
Well, napping might not be, practical for everyone.
Right.
But I think there are a few key takeaways.
Okay.
First of all, we need to prioritize sleep.
Yeah.
Good sleep.
Good sleep, enough sleep.
Not just the quantity, though.
Right.
But, the quality
Right.
and the timing.
Right. Okay.
And then, we also need to spot the signs of fatigue.
Yeah, in ourselves and others, right?
Yeah, in yourself and in others.
Yeah.
So are you confused?
Yeah.
Are you irritable?
Right.
Having trouble focusing?
Yeah, those are all signs.
Those are all signs. And don't be afraid to take a break or to ask for help,
Yeah, that's good advice. I like that.
especially when you need it.
Yeah, that's good for any situation, really.